Hey, good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever it is. Starfleet International, the international conference, the virtual component. I am Fleet Captain Charles C. Carden. I am part of the Department of Communications. I head up public relations, and I also head up the Department of Costuming. I am based in Michigan, in the United States, part of the USS Grand Petoskey chapter. And I am here today to talk with Mike Urvand, who is a gentleman in who heads up Region 6, which is Minnesota, Mike, if I'm not mistaken.
Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, and Wisconsin.
That's a whole lot of the I was going to say the motherland, the heartland, a whole lot of the heartland. But yeah, Mike has an extensive background, as I understand it, in Star Trek fan production. So, Mike, what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk through a very kind of brief treatise on the overall what are fan productions, and then let's just jump into some specifics, and we'll get your Star Trek story. We'll get kind of some of the questions. I regularly do interviews on in my other life. I'm a podcaster. I help run a podcasting network, and an interview segment is one of them that we do. So I do these all the time. So hopefully my format fits the bill, but we'll find out.
Sounds good.
Just in case you don't know, a Star Trek fan production is a production made by fans. That was a tough one, wasn't it? With elements of the Star Trek franchise. Paramount Pictures, CBS, and their licensees are the only organizations legally allowed to create commercial products. And again, this is from Wikipedia, so Mike, I'm sure you'll be able to expand on it with your own experience when we get to that in a
Right.
moment here. With the Star Trek name and trademark, the fan film community has received some coverage from the mainstream media, for good or for bad. But we'll get into that as we go. So, Mike, you and I have talked a little bit. Turns out we run in some very vague circles, in so much that you live in the same town as my business partner, my college roommate, who I make our podcast. We're at Secret Friends United
Right.
Podcasting Network out there in the Twin City suburbs in Minnesota. And you told me your wife worked for General Mills, and my friend works for General Mills. So it's just like, oh my
Yep.
God, the world gets so small. But tell me about, how did you get into Star Trek? What's your Star Trek origin story?
Oh gosh. So I started watching Star Trek back in 73, 74 with the animated series,
Oh, okay, awesome,
the Filmation animated series. Then I hooked back around and caught the original series in syndication.
gotcha.
Back when I was knee high to a grasshopper. I'd come home every day. Well, actually, Sunday nights I tried to stay awake to catch reruns of the original series. Usually I get about 15, 20 minutes in, fall asleep. And then I was so thankful that they moved it to daily runs. And then I caught up with all of them after school.
Yeah,
And then I was hooked. And then from there it was just like TM, the motion picture, and I was off to the races.
awesome.
And yeah, and ever since then I've just been, gobbling up with a spoon. So,
I love
and
it.
then yeah, and then I was in college when I heard about Starfleet. I happened to be at a con and I saw a business card for the Zarek down in the Twin Cities, and it had the name of the CO at the time, his name was Gary Anderson, and I tried contacting him, and I got a hold of his son Eric Anderson, who was the RC at the time, and just chatted back and forth briefly. It had the notion of started a chapter back in 91.
Oh my, oh wow.
Yeah, July of 91 we commissioned. We started a shuttle back then when we did shuttles.
Okay.
And then we commissioned as a chapter, my chapter, the Imperium. We commissioned in April of 92, and we've been going continuously since.
That is so wild. Yeah, our chapter here in Michigan, my wife and I started it back in 2019 when somebody said, "Hey, SFI is a thing." I'd never heard of it. I'd been a Star Trek fan since the late 80s when I was 10 and Star Trek 4 came out, but I had never heard of SFI at all. So we started that. We actually managed to spin that into 4 other chapters in our state, because here in Michigan, there were no chapters.
Sure.
So we were pretty proud of that. But yeah, after 5 years of running hardcore, my wife and I have kind of stepped back, taken a step back. So we're still, kind of officers on, or I say members of our senior staff, but we handed over the commanded chapter to someone else. And I'm enjoying doing stuffing like this instead
Yeah.
and helping my small business grow. So I'm down with it. So, all right, well, let's talk Star Trek. You were getting a little bit into talking about the animated series.
Mhm.
You came into the original series during the boom in syndication in the 70s, which is where Star Trek blossomed. It's the reason that it's still around was
Right.
because of that in the 1970s. But yeah, talk to me about what is peak Star Trek for you. Let's talk a favorite movie or a show, even maybe if it's multimedia game, a book, something like that. Like what's top shelf Star Trek? Give me the 10,000-foot view or give me something very specific, whatever you like.
Okay, so a lot of people are into the action-oriented Star Trek, like J.J. Abrams Star Trek, what have you. My wife loves the Abrams movies. I don't hold it against her, even though I probably should.
You
That's
know,
just
it's
me.
it's kind of the same thing with my wife. While she did grow up in it, she wasn't so hardcore, but saw the JJ movies a little bit before we
Mhm.
met because we've been together 11 years, and said, "Well, we kind of like them." And I'm like, "Well, you really haven't seen the rest of Star Trek." And then we kind of we got a little bit more
Right.
educated as time goes by.
Now, now me, I like a mix of action and deep thought. So my jam is Deep Space Nine. It's the
Yes,
secret
sir.
child of Star Trek, and
Yep.
I love it. If you ask me who my favorite captain is, I go against the grain and I'll say Ben Sisko 10 times out of 10.
I love it. No, I mean it's funny
Yeah.
on my show. I'm not trying to make this all about me and what I do, but I've been running a Star Trek podcast for about 4 years now called Code
Mhm.
47. And one of the key things that we do is we break. My goal when we started it was to touch every single episode of all of Star Trek, and we're doing that individually by seasons, and we kind of splice it up. So we do 6 or 7 episodes at a time in our second segment, where we're just doing brief little touches. And we're in season 5 of DS9 right now. So
Okay.
actually, yeah, we're recording tomorrow, and so we're in the middle of it. So I just finished watching 7 episodes today, and yeah, DS9 is where it's at, always
Yeah.
will be. And if I think if people haven't discovered it, they're definitely missing out. So,
Yeah. I mean, it gets into the deep political thought, the deep philosophical thought. It touches on religion, politics,
mhm.
spycraft. I mean,
Yeah,
the horrors of war. I mean, everything, all of human thought, boil down into a 50-minute drama. I
it's all
mean,
right there.
plus
Yeah.
plus there's comedy. If you want comedy, there's that too.
Yep.
Everything you want right there.
Absolutely great job. And just I always like to plug in anytime I talk about anything in the United States and Canada. All of the Star Treks, with the exception of Star Trek Prodigy, are available on Paramount Plus. Star Trek Prodigy, which is really wonderful, and we're also talking about that on my show, is available on
Yep.
Netflix. So yeah, highly recommend if you don't have it. Those things are also, of course, still available on physical media, which is still, believe it or not, really very smart to have things that way,
Yep.
because streaming is a lot less I should say reliable than we always felt it would be. Oh,
I
it'll
I
always
would
be there. It'll always be there. It's not.
I was just talking to my wife about this actually while I had COVID. We we had the discussion through the door because I was lamenting the fact that I didn't have a Blu-ray player in the bedroom where I was quarantined.
Mm,
And she's like, "Well, honey, what are you worried about? Because we've got streaming." I'm like, "You've got your iPad in there. You've got the TV in there." I'm like, "Honey, what happens if the internet goes down? Then I'm sitting here bored off my butt
oh my
in the
gosh.
bedroom. I could read, I suppose, but I've
Books,
also had
forget about it. I know. No,
well,
I totally
well,
understand.
I also had pink eye in both eyes, so I
Oh,
couldn't focus my eyes to read.
oh my
And
gosh. Oh, that's
and
rough.
she's like, "Well, that's never going to happen." And then about 20 minutes
Right.
later, the internet went down for about 20 minutes, and I'm
Of
like,
course.
"Aha! See?
Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah. Yeah. Well,
aha!"
I myself had COVID last Thanksgiving, and yeah, I managed to bring up the little TV that we use when we do Comic Cons and stuff. We have a little TV that we show episodes. I didn't bring the player up, but I did at least stream movies, so we got by that way. But you're absolutely right; it could have ended in a different direction. Okay, so you actually covered my next question, which was favorite character. I assume when you say Cisco, that is your favorite character overall, or you just talk about a captain?
He's pretty much my favorite character overall.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. Do you have, like myself, you see my studio background is very much filled with collectibles that I've gathered over the years.
Mhm.
Do you, and it's all genres. I touch
Mhm.
on a lot of different things in
Oh,
in
sure.
my work. But do you have a favorite Star Trek collectible that you've collected over the last 30, 40 years that you've been a fan?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
That's what I'm here for, the good questions.
Let's see. It would have to be my signed photo from William Shatner of that I actually had a photo taken of him, my wife, and one of my daughters and I. And then the following year I saw him, or 2 years later I saw him at another convention and I took the photo with me and he signed it.
Oh,
So that would
fantastic.
probably be my favorite. That's my favorite collectible.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm not a huge autograph guy, which is why we went to Star Trek Las Vegas last year, and I just was really underwhelmed because it's so
Mm,
paywalled. It's all
right.
about photo ops and autographs, and
Yeah.
I have two. I have Jonathan Frakes, and then I have a photo op we did with him on the cruise last year,
Mm,
and then I have Anson Mount, which I was a big fan of his from his portraying the role of Captain Pike on Discovery. So I saw him at Mission Chicago, which was in the beginning of
sure.
2022, and it was before Strange New Worlds came out, and he signed that. He was so funny. I was the first guy in his line. He was wearing a mask, but even in his eyes, he looked terrified. Like this was the first con he had ever done. But bless his heart, he was so nice. He wrote, "Charlie, you have my respect," which is a weird thing to write, but it's very
Yeah.
memorable. It's very memorable. I like that.
Yeah.
And then yeah, those are really the only two that I've got because it's just not a thing for me.
Sure.
But they're very cherished because Riker is my favorite Star Trek character.
Right.
Always has been. So yeah. All right, last get to know you question. What is your favorite Star Trek alien or affiliation? So do you love the Romulans, the Klingons? Do you love
Mm.
Starfleet? Do you love the Borg? What's your number one?
Let's see. In terms of Star Trek Alien, I would probably say the Vulcans.
Okay.
Um, in terms of like role play and stuff like that, I I actually have a version of the Imperium that we role play in Second Life.
Okay.
So if you ever manage to get into Second Life, you can actually go find a future version of the Imperium, an Odyssey class starship Imperium C, and in there we all have backstories for our characters. My character has a long history. He's had a Vulcan wife in the past and blah 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 blah, and so
Okay.
he's very enamored with Vulcan culture,
Oh
even though
wow.
he's human.
Cool.
So
That's
yeah.
awesome. Good deal.
So
I love it. All right, cool. Well, all right. Well, let's get on to the main event, and I'm gonna, turn the microphone over to you, and you can walk me through.
okay,
Talk to me
sure.
about Star Trek fan films. How did you get started? What have you done? What maybe are you still working on? And just how do you feel about it, the craft overall? So take it away.
So I got interested in Star Trek fan films back in, oh God, the mid 1980s. And it was pure happenstance. I happened to be reading an issue of Starlog magazine back.
Oh, the classic.
I know,
Oh,
right?
such good stuff. Such good stuff. Oh my God.
And
All of us
th-
old guys and gals just love Starlog. It was what we had. It was before the internet. This is
right,
the 70s and
exactly.
the 80s. Yeah.
Exactly. And this was right around the time of Star Trek 4. So it
Okay.
was like
Yeah.
right around
When I
87,
when
87.
when I became a fan, yeah, it was that
Yeah,
was the first film I can really remember being like, oh my God. I think I might
yeah,
actually watch that tonight because there are elements of Star Trek 4
right,
in the current season of Prodigy that I thought, you
right,
know what,
exactly.
maybe I'll watch.
Yeah,
So I think I'm
yeah,
home alone. My wife is up visiting her folks this weekend, so I'm home alone.
yeah.
So I might drink some good beer and watch some Star Trek. We'll see what happens.
So in this issue of Starlog, they were talking about Star Trek 4, but then they had a little side piece about George Takei being in another Star Trek film. And it was a film called Yorktown Time to Heal. And it was being produced by fans. And I'd never heard of anything like that before. And I they had a few photos, and it had a picture of people in TOS uniforms, but with shoulder straps and weird, um, you know, starship patches. And I'm
Right.
like, okay,
Kind of
this
thrown
is
off the scent, right? Thrown off the scent.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is so cool. And it had starship illustrations by Andy Probert. And I'm
Wow.
like, this
The
is so cool.
man.
And yeah, and I'm like, I can't wait for this to come out. And then nothing happened.
Oh, wrong
Right.
book. Sorry. I was trying to pull out my my
Yeah,
my
Mr.
my pri
Skarsgård.
my prize publication.
Right.
This is what
Yeah.
made me a Star Trek fan. I
Yeah.
love this book
I
like
went through so many
yeah.
copies of that manual.
Yeah,
So many
I
copies of
did.
it.
I had it and it disappeared. And
Right.
this is a secondhand copy because it's got a rip on the binding. But who can?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna take it upstairs with me because I'm down in my basement.
Yeah. There you
Take
go.
it upstairs with me and enjoy it. So anyway, please continue.
So, but that I the film like dropped off the face of the earth, but it got me thinking about fan films, and I sort of never let them go. Fast forward to like the mid 2000s or the early 2000s, and I'm at work one day and I'm putzing around and just surfing the net and searching through SFI chapters, and I happen upon the USS Angeles in Region 4.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I've heard of it.
I see a mention of a fan film that they're doing, The Voyages of the Angelus. And I'm like, what the heck is this? But I find out that their films at the time were for members only because they're just doing it for themselves.
Sure.
They don't want
Makes
to get in
sense.
trouble. They don't want to get in trouble with Paramount. I totally get that. Well, one of their members, Rob Caves, he starts doing his own films or his own fan series called Star Trek Hidden Frontier. A lot of the members of the Angelus are participating, and I start watching this thing voraciously. And I'm like, you know what? This is like the end of the second season of it, beginning of the third season. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to contact these guys. And so I contact them, and I'm like, you know, I'd like to get involved with this. And they're like, how can you get involved? You're out in Minnesota. We're out in LA. And I'm like, let me write something. Let me just shoot my shot. And they're like, okay, we've got this episode coming up. We're gonna send you a scene, see if you can polish it for us, because we want to. It's not
Nice.
really clicking for us. So I polished it for them, and they're like, okay, I like what you're doing with this. Come on board. You can be a story editor. So I came on
Nice.
board as a story editor. I was polishing scripts, and I I did a couple of scenes and a couple of a couple of scripts and whatnot. Eventually, I was doing some scripts myself, usually with a co-writer. Then in I eventually became the head of the story department,
Hmm.
which meant I was hiring writers. I was editing, and we were blocking out the seasons. The executive producers, my writing partner, and I, we were blocking out the seasons, assigning writers for the season and whatnot. And then, and I was being greedy. I'll admit it. There was one character I wanted to write for. Um, my and I'm going to backtrack for just a second.
By all means.
When I said Ben Sisko was my favorite character of all, that's a little bit of a misnomer. He's my favorite character in canon Star Trek.
Sure.
My favorite character in all of Star Trek is McKenzie Calhoun from the New Frontier book.
Oh, yes. Peter David's
Yes.
1990s novel series,
Yes.
which was the first ever, if I might, cast of characters created exclusively for another medium. Yeah.
Exactly. I actually named my second son after McKenzie Calhoun.
No kidding. Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I haven't read those in years. I think I have one of the audiobooks on my Audible.
Yes.
I should finish it because it's been many, many years. Yeah.
Yes. One of my officers is Lieutenant Commander McKenzie Urvand on board the
Very
Imperium.
nice. I love it.
Anyway, so we're talking to Rob. I was talking to Rob, and one of our characters in Hidden Frontier is Elizabeth Shelby.
Right.
We ported her over from New Frontier into Hidden Frontier. And so I told Rob, I'm like, if we ever have McKenzie Calhoun come on for an episode, I want to write for him. That's my only demand. You're not paying me for this job. I want to write for him.
Right.
And so he's like, hey, Mike, just so you know, season 6, I got a certain thing I want to do. we have James Cawley, who was playing Captain Kirk in another fan film series
Oh
or
yeah,
fan
yeah,
series.
yeah. The continues, right? Isn't he that guy?
Right, Star Trek.
Yeah.
He's Star Trek New Voyages. He was
New
doing.
Voyages. Thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you, thank you.
So he's coming out to do an episode with us, but he doesn't want to play Captain Kirk. So we're gonna have him play another captain. And I'm like, oh really? He's like, he's like, he's like, yeah. We're gonna have him play Captain Calhoun. He's like, yes,
My
you're
goodness.
gonna be able to write the Calhoun scenes. I'm like,
Wow.
oh. And so we wrote an episode called Vigil, myself and my writing partner, Carlos Pedraza, and it's considered one of the best fan series episodes that's been produced. I'm extremely proud of that episode.
Awesome.
So yeah, and then that went for 7 seasons total. I got to be in one episode. I got to be in the series finale. I played the Starfleet Chief of Operations.
Oh, how exciting.
I was in exactly 2 scenes. It was a
Okay.
wedding scene. But the interesting thing about it is that we got covered by the LA Times. We were in the entertainment section, front page of the LA Times.
No
entertainment
kidding.
section.
And this was,
on,
and this was, sorry to interrupt. This was when? What year?
2007 in July, I want to say.
Okay. Ooh boy,
Yeah.
LA in July. Woo, in that uniform. Hopefully lots of AC.
Yeah, the white dress uniform. Yep.
Yeah.
And we were at the Irvine, the University of California Irvine Arboretum, outdoor Arboretum.
That is a famous filming locale, as I remember, even in Star Trek. Yeah.
And it was beautiful, and it was hot.
Oh,
so hot.
yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
In between takes, the production assistant kept passing out bottles of water. We're just chugging water as fast as we could. And so on the LA Times, they took a big picture of this wedding scene, and I'm on the front page of the LA Times entertainment section. There I am in my white admiral's uniform, and I'm like, okay, I could die now. I'm in Starfleet uniform,
right?
In the LA Times on the front page. I've made it
real.
as big as I'm gonna make it. That's
and
done.
I love it. I love it. Where now? I was not at all aware, and I'm sure everyone who's watching will want to know, where can I see this? Where does it exist?
You could probably go out to the LA Times archive and find it. I have a copy of it somewhere. I actually went out and got a physical copy of it.
Yeah,
and I have it tucked away in a box somewhere.
But as far as these films and series, they live on a website somewhere. It's like, where's the access?
You can actually, it's out on the YouTube, It's out on YouTube. The YouTube. You can actually go to the Hidden Frontier YouTube channel.
Okay, great.
All the episodes are there. Yep.
Great.
And we actually have they're pretty low quality, because again, this was back from 2000, 2007, so the resolution is kind of low on
SD.
some of the episodes.
Yeah, standard def.
Yeah. We actually have a fan who's running it through an AI upscaler. So he's upscaling to some of it to high def.
Can he do DS9 and Voyager next? I know that's one of those in the fan community, as you know, it's one of those things that may never happen because of the enormous cost and because of the death of the real death of physical media. The profit isn't there for Viacom to do it. So but anyway, that's wild. That's so wild.
Yeah. Now I was lucky because I was on the production staff. I actually got physical media of all 7 seasons.
Holy cow!
In 720p. So
wow,
I'm like,
that is so
if
awesome.
If I could get that to someone to upscale it, it would probably help them a lot. But
yeah.
So after that, I kind of stepped back. I was in a new relationship. Ended up marrying this person, settling in, building a new blended family and stuff. So I started. So I'm like, sort of step back a little bit. And I kept my toes in a little bit. I consulted a little bit, a tiny little bit with the spin-off series Star Trek Odyssey that they did.
Okay.
But that was just when it was first getting off the ground, and then I backed away completely. But I've been keeping track of all the different shows that have come out since then. and there's been so many of them, like Star Trek Intrepid, Star Trek, Starship Farragut.
Yeah.
New Voyages was going for a long time, so it's same way as Star Trek Continues.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I mean, Star Trek Renegades.
Yeah. Yeah. The one I've
I
heard,
mean,
and
that was a huge one.
and a lot of that Renegades one, that was one that we got a lot of actors. I think Garrett was in that one. Didn't
Mhm.
Tim Rush show
Yep,
up in one of those? And
yep.
maybe even and Walter as well. So it's just like, a
Walter was
lot.
in that as
Yeah.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was Scott. That was Sky Conway's outfit, and that they did Star Trek of Gods and Men before that.
Okay. That sounds very
Yep,
familiar. Gotcha.
yep.
Very good. How exciting. How exciting. All right. So what happens next? So we're move forward where that was, you got your real break in 2007. And so we're moving into, more current time. So what's your association these days? Or what's going on?
Right now, I'm sort of a bystander. I watch what's going on.
Okay.
Right now, it's hard to, if you're outside and you want to get in, it's, unless you're going to produce your own work,
Right.
it's kind of hard to get in as an outsider, because a lot of the productions are kind of insulated,
Right.
because the rules have changed so much.
Of course.
Before it was sort of I don't want to say it was a free for all, but there was sort of a cowboy mentality, because
Sure.
it was an environment of benign neglect from Paramount. As long as you
Right.
weren't trying to make money, and as long as
Right.
you were respecting the property, they didn't mess with you. In fact, when we were working on Hidden Frontier, we actually were getting feedback from Paramount.
Wow.
They knew about
That's very different as I understand it. Yeah.
I mean, we had people inside the production office who knew about our work. They were watching our work, and I mean, they didn't give us notes, but they told us that they were enjoying our work.
Yeah.
Um, they shoot us an email saying, "Hey, we love your stuff."
Yeah. Wow.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And
nowadays,
yeah, not now these days as I understand it. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I mean, the events have happened that a certain set of guidelines have been placed on fan productions. Because fan productions, they went into a mode where it was all about topping the other fan productions that were out there,
Mm,
or tried to make them bigger and better,
yeah. Yeah.
better sets, better cast, actually getting, stars from the productions in the casts, which you
Yeah.
can't do anymore. That's been strictly verboten now by Paramount.
Mm, right. And
Um,
you understand why. Really, I mean,
yeah,
nobody really wants to look at the big ugly corporation and say, "Oh, I understand why they're doing it." But
right,
and again, as you said, as an outsider now looking in, even yourself, you become a bystander, and you took that step
right,
back, that you're looking at it and saying, "Well, I know why they can't have, if I want to keep, as an actor, I want to keep myself viable in the Star Trek
right,
sphere. You can't be sticking your toe, you can't be, swimming in somebody else's pool, so to speak."
right,
So
right.
yeah, so it makes
Yeah,
sense. It's a bummer for us
yeah,
as civies not to be able to see that stuff.
right.
But what an incredible moment in time, man. That's just absolutely
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and the stuff that's being put out now. I mean, I would have killed to have had access to the technology that we have now.
Of course.
I mean, it just like, for example, our writers' room was agonizingly slow, because had to do all of our editors' meetings by email, or
Oh my gosh.
by AOL Instant Messenger, if we could. A
Oh my
Zoom call,
God.
would have been heaven.
Right. You
We
could have
could,
had all the, like in an RC
right,
meeting, although you could have all the little
exactly.
faces and someone saying, "All right, let's move on to page 14. And Barbara, what do you think? Let's punch up this graph down here," or whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But instead we'd have big long email threads about the script
And
that
then
would go on for
just
a
like,
week.
like anybody else, you're like, "Well, I was on vacation, or I had the flu, or blah, blah,
Exactly.
blah." So, oh my
Exactly.
gosh, that's so crazy. So, wow,
And
how amazing for you. That is awesome. So, well, as we start to kind of wind things down, if you were to, in a perfect world, say to somebody who's been like, I got to break into this world, I want to be in this world, what advice would you give that person?
To be honest, absolutely honest, for Star Trek fan films, I would say come up with something that is bold, that is something that could still be Star Trek, but
Right.
that is not something that's currently in production.
So it could be out of
And
the
that's
box.
right.
Yeah.
Go old school, or go, there's plenty of gap years between
Right.
the end of Picard and the 32nd century of Discovery.
Hundreds of years.
Plop it
Yeah.
in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
plop it in
Right.
there.
Right.
Or there's a set of fan films that I think I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's like something 503 or something like that. But there's a set of it's in between Enterprise and TOS.
Okay.
It's like right around the dawn, the birth of the Federation.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's you can play in that area too. But even that, Paramount is very protective of that time frame.
Sure, because it's established,
I mean,
and it could be something that they
right,
want to do, which you totally
right.
get.
I
Yeah.
mean, and that's kind of why there's been trouble, like right around the Klingon War and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Certain fan films have gotten into trouble because of that. They wanted to play in that sandbox.
Can't do
I
it.
mean, you can't do it because Paramount wanted to play in that sandbox as well. I mean, there were other factors involved as well, but
Absolutely.
part of it is that you have to be mindful of what you want to
Yeah.
do and how you want to do it. The other thing I would suggest to any filmmakers that want to do it right now is keep your expectations modest. I know everybody wants to be the next Robert Weiss or the next Jonathan Frakes when you're making a movie,
Right.
but don't try to crowdfund $1 million. Don't try to build an entire backlot.
Right.
If you can build a bridge set, great. I mean, if you could do a physical set, great. We never had physical sets. The most physical set we ever had was the UC Irvine Arboretum.
Right. On
That's
location.
all,
Right.
Yeah. Everything else we did with green screens, and this was back in 2000 to 2007.
Oh
So we
my.
had the nice green glow around everybody.
Oh, how funny. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Not even the level
So,
of technology of what I see when I'm looking at you, which is,
right, exactly.
a
I mean, if
Zoom
we had
background. Yeah.
this would have been awesome back in 2000.
Right. Right.
But now, I mean, you have some outfits that are doing full sets. Like there's a really awesome fan film that Starship Farragut, which
Right.
the fan series.
Yeah. I've heard of it, and
Yeah.
I know some people who are associated with it. Yeah.
Farragut Forward is coming out probably next year.
Mhm.
It's set in the movie era, and they've actually built movie sets
In those
from the TMP era.
beautiful monster marines. My God.
Right.
Oh, right.
And I'm looking forward to that. But I mean, they also crowdfunded tens of thousands of dollars for it.
Right. That helps.
They're skirting along the the ragged edge of those Paramount guidelines.
Very dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah. If I had been them, I think they probably had some sort of agreement with Paramount that was grandfathered in.
By the skin of their teeth, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Skin of the teeth on the razor's edge.
Right.
No, I totally get that.
Yeah. So if I were them, if I were a filmmaker getting in, I would say, pay attention to the guidelines. There's some wiggle room there, a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah.
But don't do anything to upset Paramount.
Yeah.
Because
oh my goodness.
we're all playing in that sandbox, and we all don't want to get poop in that sandbox for everyone else to play in.
Yes, have your face rubbed in it, so to speak. So, well, wow, that's totally awesome. This has been a great conversation, Mike. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Very exciting stuff. Where can this is always how I wrap up every time I have a guest on my show. Where do people find you out there in the world of socials?
I've got Instagram is Mike Urvand, Facebook is Mike Urvand. I've got a YouTube channel that's got just a couple little videos on it. It's also Mike Urvand. My Twitter, which I don't really use that much, except
I stay away from it
here
myself.
and there. That's a political mess right now. Don't go there. There be dragons
Ooh.
there.
Yeah. Oh boy.
So we're just.
Gotcha.
I'm not gonna tell you where I'm at there.
Oh, very smart.
That's a scary dark place.
Oh my God, no doubt about it. And
Yeah.
I, just to plug myself, again, I am 1/3 of the trio that puts on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, which can be found at secretfriendsunite.com. We also have a Patreon with a lot of great additional content. As far as reaching out to me, I can be found on Instagram and Threads at the C3, spelled out TheCeeThree, for all of our content links and fun stuff. We also got a great Discord, which is the most fun corner of the internet by which to have geek conversations. But this has been fun. Have a great international conference. All of my fellow Starfleet International Starfleeteers. Starfleeteers, I don't know, whatever we want to call them. But anyway, this has been a great pleasure. And it once again brought to you by the wonderful Department of Communications. Happy to do it. I'm going to tell you, as always, that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking. Nanu, nanu. Good night.
Like a prosper.